Welcome back to Stories Sustain Us. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and today we have an incredibly powerful and inspiring guest, Chad Brown. Chad's life journey is a testament to resilience and the power of transformation. From his early years growing up in Austin to seeing action in the Navy during Desert Storm and in Somalia, his experiences have shaped his perspective in profound ways. Following his service in the Navy, Chad's promising career in advertising took a major turn, leading him on a path of self-discovery. His travels were central to his personal growth, but his story didn't stop there. Struggling with mental health challenges, Chad found healing in the most unexpected of places, nature. Through fly fishing, he discovered a therapeutic outlet, which eventually blossomed into something much bigger. Chad went on to found Soul River Inc., a remarkable organization that connects veterans and youth by taking them on transformative outdoor adventures. But that's not all. His work with Love is King aims to create safe spaces for marginalized communities in the great outdoors, fostering inclusivity and empowerment. Today, Chad uses his platform as a storyteller and documentary filmmaker to promote understanding and change. He believes, as you'll hear in the interview, in the immense power of love to combat racism and bigotry. Here's a bit more about Chad Brown's background before we get into the interview. Following his Navy service, Chad studied communication design and photography at American Intercontinental University. From there, he attended Pratt Institute in New York City, where he earned his Master of Science in Communication design degree. He has managed interdisciplinary teams as a creative director, art director, and photographer, both as a freelance artist and for agencies. He is a former editorial photographer for the New York Times. His work has also crossed into underground hip-hop fashion and culture, where he worked with hip-hop mogul Russell Simmons and Rashid Young to photograph and develop creative ad campaigns for national hip-hop culture magazines. In addition to founding two nonprofits, Soul River Inc. and Love is King, which you'll learn much more about in this interview, Chad does work on Capitol Hill, where he advocates for our public lands and wild places, and he helps the youth leaders of tomorrow interface with congressional members. Chad is a board member of the National Wildlife Refuge Association and Alaska Wilderness League. He has been featured on BBC and CBS, including Good Morning America, and Nat Geo Disney's Call to the Wild reality TV show. He's also been featured in national publications like Outside Magazine and The Drake, as well as in regional publications all across the Pacific Northwest, where he currently resides. Chad was the first recipient of the Breaking Barriers Award presented by Orvis and the Bending Toward Justice Award from Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley. I am really grateful to have Chad on the show today. I think he's an incredible human being doing amazing work, and I'm confident you're going to be inspired by him. I know I am. One last quick comment before we get going. Chad and I do have a brief conversation about the topic of suicide. Just in case this difficult subject is a trigger for you, please be aware of that before listening to this episode. Now, let's dive into this heartfelt conversation with Chad Brown, a man whose story speaks to the healing power of nature, community, and love, here on Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. Chad, welcome to Stories Sustain Us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been hoping to get you on my show. I've known you for a few years now, and you're doing such amazing things in the world, and I'm incredibly grateful that you agreed to come on the show and share your story with me and with the audience. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so the show goes. We learn about you, and then we learn about all the great stuff you're doing. So I know we grew up in kind of central Texas together. I was in San Antonio. You were up the road a little ways closer to Austin. So
Yeah.
tell me how you got from Austin to where you are now. What was life like for you as a kid, and how you got to the person you are today?
It's a broad stroke.
It is a big question.
Wow. Big journey. Yeah, big journey. We all have many different journeys we take. Yeah, born and raised Austin, Texas. And I had, I guess my journey started out, once when I finished high school and was entering college, my second year in college. I, basically I found myself in a hardship, financial hardship, tied in with my parents trying to support me to finish college.
Yeah.
And I, I made a decision to go into the military, really to go after that GI Bill, where I could be able to use to help myself finish school.
Yeah.
And, end up going into the Navy and doing my time. And unfortunately, I went in right at a time when things were not that great. That was during the time when Desert Storm was kicking off. And so after my boot camp, that's what I ended up going into the second phase of Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And then after that, I ended up going back to, I was pulled into the campaign of Operation Restore Hope Somalia as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and so it was some really a bad time that I went in. I'm not for sure if there's a great time to go into the military. But yeah, but my whole time was two wars and serving in two wars and being in touring like uh 13 countries. Majority was third world countries, Middle East, um, and my last was actually bottom of the world. Was doing some time down in Antarctica.
Wow.
And then after that, that's when I got out of the Navy and I got my GI Bill
Yeah.
and I applied that back to my schooling.
And
Uh,
when about this was late 90s or early
Yeah, this
2000?
was early 90s,
Yeah. Early. Yeah.
91, around the
Yeah.
91 to 94.
Yeah.
Um, and then ended up going back to school and finishing off um my bachelor's, and then also finish off my master's. And they're both in communication design, photography. I just went to art school. I finished off at Pratt in New York City. And then after Pratt, I stepped into the advertising design world in New York and cut my teeth in the city, in the
Yeah.
agency world, as a junior designer, and made my way up to an art director and working quite. I just hopped in many different design firms and ad agencies within that space. And let me think about this. And as I was doing my work, that's when the towers fell,
Mm.
and we came under attack, and that was a really dark moment in all our lives,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget that day. I was sitting on the train, and the train happened to stall right. It was going right over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I saw those two planes come in and hit the towers, and it
Jeez.
was really dark, and ironically I was actually on my way to a meeting in one of the towers that morning.
Wow.
And so it I would never forget, because when that plane hit, it just like the whole entire train completely went to silence, and it was a weird silence. And then, like, minutes later, the train inside that train, it was like a horror show. Everybody's screaming all over the place, and
Yeah.
it was just really, really bad. And so I got off the train. Eventually, I got off the train, and things was really, really chaotic in the city. And I ended up making my way not to my meeting. I ended up making my way back to the company that I was working for, and it just put everybody in a weird state. No one
Yeah.
really didn't know what to do. And so that launched me, because there was a major uncertainty in the air,
Sure.
and no one didn't really know. But that did put me in a position, not in the greatest position, but actually my company ended up going under. And also that was when I started to freelance as a creative professional.
Yeah.
And I was really good at it, and I took on clients. And one of the clients that I did take on was doing some work for Russell Simmons platform, who part of the label of Run DMC. If anybody know about that, and so I was.
'Cause that's like hip hop royalty. I mean
It's
that.
all hip hop, yeah, hip
Yeah,
hop,
I mean
yeah,
that's
yeah.
big time for. Just in case somebody doesn't know, that's like big time hip hop royalty. Russell
Exactly,
Simmons and his crew and everything that he did. I mean that's big
absolutely,
time. That's big time.
absolutely, absolutely. And I went on for a ride. It was really awesome working for him, the company, and gave me a lot of creative leadway to
That's
spearhead some
amazing.
projects and stuff,
Yeah,
and that kept me employed
yeah.
for a good bit,
Right on. That's
and from
awesome.
there, those connections landed me overseas doing some work for another fashion mogul who runs a company called Epic, and it's like the second largest fashion house in entire Asia. And so I was, developing their brand, doing a lot of filming and a lot of photography, and
What part
hopping
of
all
Asia is
over.
this in? Is this
This was in Hong Kong,
Hong Kong?
and
Right on.
yep, in Hong Kong, and I was doing work in Hong Kong, Bangladesh, and Saigon. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
just hopping in three different places because they had offices in different areas, and so I was doing a
Sure.
lot of creative work, which was really awesome. And eventually, as I'm going through all of this, I end up taking a break, and this break was I was inspired off of this film that I saw. It was Motorcycle Diaries,
Okay.
and and it's a great movie, and I was really inspired off of the adventure and the journey in the early stages of Che's life, when he embarked, him and his friend,
Yeah.
on this awesome journey to see the world, um and so that right there inspired me to go on my own journey, and that was to backpack through Japan.
Right on.
And so I wanted to know what it feels like to live present in the world. Not, I guess there's this thing of like a weekend is a weekend getaway, or a 1 week getaway. But I wanted to know what it's like to be, what it feels like um, to be lost in the translation, right?
Yeah.
And to be present and live with that world when you're there for 2 or 3 months, and you're like moving in time. And so I did a good 3 months of this adventure through Japan, and I backpacked all through Japan. And I lost the time, I lost the days,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I really got deep into the culture of moving through that country. And I didn't have an agenda, no, there was no more agenda. And it was a process that I needed to go through, and I didn't know what was going on with me, because internally there was a couple things I was, I took a break because of the fast life that I was in living
Sure.
in New York. But that fast life did give me, um, it gave me structure, and it was, and it spoke to the fast paced life that I came out of the military, and so I guess what I'm saying is like they both were structures, but gave me kind of like a band-aid for me not to deal with my past.
With your inside. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was forced to deal with what's in front of me.
Always focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And um so that was the reason why I had to take this break, because I didn't know what was going on, and I was dealing with stuff, and
Yeah.
had a great time going to Japan, and it was amazing
And it's still
experience.
early 2000s, and I'm guessing.
Yeah, early 2000s, yep.
Yeah.
And um and so I came out of that situation and came back to New York, and you know, there were some things uh, that I outgrew in my own space.
Sure.
You know, the cup that I drank from, the bed that I slept in, everything didn't feel right anymore to me. And so I talked to a mentor of mine back in the day, and he told me it's like, you know, when you go through a life changing experience like that, it's something. Uh, you know, it's there's also a lesson that you do find yourself outgrowing the space of where you're at. You can outgrow your friends. You
Sure.
can outgrow your environment. And when you
Yeah.
start feeling that way, it's a time to move forward, you
Yeah.
know, move to a newer chapter, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Totally
I
relate
started
to that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I started to listen to that, you know, and listen to how that spoke to me, and so I opened myself up to that universe, and that's what led me to Portland, Oregon,
Yeah. What
and
a
and it was a
amazing.
new job.
Yeah. That Japanese experience going, across Japan. What a pivotal point for you. I mean, that really it sounds like, 'cause I know some of the rest of your story. I don't want to interrupt it too much,
Yeah,
but
no,
but
it's
I
all
just want to
good.
point out. I mean, that 2-3 month, you know trip where you just kind of slowed down and lost time, and and that got you. It sounds like, in a big way, to where you are now. Without that experience, we might be having a different conversation.
Yeah,
So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that
that's
was a
wonderful.
there was a beautiful experience, and it was a life changing experience, and I think even to this day, I'm still learning from it. You know,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I'm still learning from it. Um, yeah, you never know how life is going to unfold when you're. I guess I don't know. We're all searching in life, right? We're all
Yeah,
searching,
yeah,
you know, and I guess you know the get back on that story. That search brought me to Portland, Oregon, and took on a new job. And little did I know that the things that I was witnessing that was happening inside of me, it was starting to bubble up now. You know,
yeah,
I'm on this new job in Portland,
yeah,
and you know, here I'm working at this agency as a senior art director, doing my thing, and now I'm experiencing anxiety, I'm experiencing depression, I'm experiencing, you know, all kinds of things going on, and it gets to a point where um I I end up losing my job.
yeah,
You know, it got to a point where I just completely um I would say became a vegetable, but I was very well close to being a vegetable because I was paralyzed. I couldn't function as an adult, really, like, you know, working, etc. You know, and my world was basically crumbling
or
down, and
shrinking. Yeah,
really I lost everything. You know,
yeah. It's
and
2010s, 20. Where are we at here in time?
oh man, um, yeah, probably 2011, 2012, something
11,
like that.
12. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry you went
so
through that, man.
yeah, it sucks, you know. And so it was hard, you know. I ended up becoming homeless. I did find myself to navigate to a church by a friend, and they did a lot of praying. But from that church, you know, there's a couple of friends out of that space. They helped me navigate back to the VA
Yeah.
to get extra help. And so I, you know, got the help and got on meds and that they gave me, and um, yeah, that became this whole chapter became just a major big struggle journey, just like, you know, a lot of us vets out there
Yeah.
are fighting, you know, PTSD, TBI, um, trying to figure out how to manage that demon
Yeah.
inside of us, you know.
Yeah.
And I was definitely losing in my battle, so trying to manage that, you know, and that definitely took me down some really deep dark paths. You know, I was found along the um, along the river, in the tumultuous area, is where I attempted suicide, and
Mm.
um, and uh, I was brought to the psych ward
Yeah.
and ended up doing 7 days in the psych ward up the VA on the
Yeah.
hill, to prove to the docs that I was not going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
And then coming out of that, I had a couple friends that came into my life and to try to help, and they took me to the river to, uh, basically said, "This is where I used to come. Used to fly fish," and they put a rod in my hand, and I taught myself how to cast, and I ended up hooking in on a small jack salmon, and that sent me hooting and hollering all over the place. And
Yeah.
it's probably the biggest loudmouth out there, but that was a day I still remember to this day, that it was a day that my joy became alive.
Oh man,
And
that's beautiful.
yeah, and I felt the joy, and I felt the joy pushing that medication out of my pores that I was taking too. Um, it 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 was, it was an experience that I was going through, and that experience was telling me, helping me make that connection at that time, that nature, fly fishing, is this connection that's my medicine that I need, and it's allowing me to experience joy.
Yeah.
And I made that connection really, really quick. And I went back to the VA hospital, talked with my docs, and they supported me. And it's literally, they wrote me a prescription, basically saying, fish more,
Be
basically.
nature. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nature
yeah,
prescription. Yeah.
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 And that's what I did. I continued to fish more, and I took on new friends, new communities,
Yeah.
through that process. And I was very blessed, of course, because a lot of the folks that came into my life was great, awesome, world-renowned anglers, fly fishermen, and there were some awesome scientists that came into my life, biologists, conservationists, hunters, and I really just kind of like just open myself up as a pupil to take in what anyone and everyone has to offer and give me, to fill my tank of knowledge to make me better,
Yeah.
and um so I became this learning pupil all over again, and I did that for a good 3 or 4 more years, and until I was starting to get stronger. And when I got stronger, one day, I was like waist deep in the water, and I put my hand in the water, and that's when I felt this urge that, I was like ready to get back into society.
Yeah. And
You
you
know,
share this with other people. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And um, I think there was an ex girlfriend that actually came to visit, and she didn't know my situation though. I I I put up a really, really good front, so she not to really know, and it was too embarrassing for me to let her know though. But eventually we sat and talked. She was only in Portland just for a little bit, and we sat and talked for a little bit,
Yeah.
and she said, I did share some of the, I eventually did share some of the stuff I was going through, and she says, Chad, I know who you are, and you're hiding right now. You're hiding, and you
Mm.
need to come out.
Yeah.
You need to come out,
Yeah.
and I will never forget that. And I think that's really that it kind of was put in my subconscious, and so that day when I was on water, I believe I was tapping into that subconscious, that I was like, I'm ready to come out of hiding,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to get back into society and play. a bigger role than myself, in this world. I didn't really know what my mission was going to be, but I knew that I did not want to go and get a job or work for the man. Basically, I wanted to do something that is to help make change in the world,
Yeah.
and I really didn't have my my head wrapped around what that idea looked like. But when I look back at the journey that I've been taking and what is happening, it was the simple form. It's like, what, nature healing fly fishing is what helped me, and maybe that can help others, and so I, at that time, I leaned into veterans, and what spoke to me was also youth.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I wonder, what does that look like to bring youth and veterans together and build, these healthy, beautiful relationships, to foster beautiful communities and play off each other to where this iron sharpening iron process happens in
Yeah.
nature, where you have a soldier who signed up to defend, his or her country, and then you have this youth that's fighting for their life, and they didn't ask to be in that position,
Right.
but they're fighting for their life, and you bring these two together, then you got this. It's like you got like two soldiers coming together, and they're both sharpening each other with, you know, with community, with love, with nature. That's where that veteran finds him or herself of giving now a new mission
Yeah. Some
to
more
help
meaning.
connect and orient our youth.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
there's the natural leadership in that DNA,
Yeah.
um, that's in all vets, um, and then the youth, in exchange of this, this relationship, is the youth, they obtain this life coach, right?
Yeah.
This big brother and big sister, and we do this relationship build around the sport of fly fishing. The sport of fly fishing opens itself up to having good communication skills or building communication skills. It opens itself up to the exploration of science, right? The study of insects, and the study of water, and the atmosphere. But it also opened itself up to wildlife, and then it also opened itself up to the spiritualness of connecting to nature as well. So
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of
To each
things
other. Right.
happening
Yeah.
within the sport of fly fishing, and that's really what I started to do, and I end up pulling all these ideas together and connecting the dots. And that's what led me to open up my first organization, which was Soul River Inc.,
Yeah.
based right out of Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
I love that origin story of how you got to Soul River Inc. I mean, that's such a beautiful story, and I heard it for the first time when I first met you in 2018. So, which is probably in this timeline not too long after you started this, and which at the time
Yeah.
I didn't know how long you'd been doing Soul River Inc. I just was blown away by you. You were one of the speakers at a river rally conference in California, and I remember hearing your story. You were on stage and telling your personal story like you just did, and then telling into more detail what Soul River Inc. does, which I'm sure you will in a moment do that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so I literally I was in tears after you were done. I was so moved by your story, and just I still want to work with you. I remember walking up to you saying, here's my business card. I was working at the
Yeah.
River Authority in San Antonio time. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to work out. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but someday I'm going to work with you because you're such an inspirational person, man. And I still want to get out on one of your deployments someday
Yeah,
with
man.
you. So talk about that. Talk about what you do with Soul River Inc. because it's so impressive what you do, bringing veterans to give them a new mission and youth who need some help and leadership and some direction coming from hard circumstances, like as you pointed out, that they didn't ask for and that they didn't create themselves. They just found themselves in a tough spot. So what does Soul River Inc. do? Because it's an amazing organization.
Yeah. The mission of Soul River Inc. is bringing youth and veterans together and serving one another through the art of fly fishing. Um, and through the art of fly fishing, the goal is to raise environmental leaders, ambassadors of nature. Um, that's the goal of the veteran. Is to help build that relationship and that connecting to nature. We do what we call deployments, which is, of course, the military term that's used, and we have veterans, which is why we use that term. But we have retooled the definition of deployments, and deployments is within Soul River Inc.'s culture. It's identifying um, places that are nature places, our public lands, fresh water, that are at threat. That there's some type of turmoil that's happening in these spaces. And when we identify what's happening, um, it's case by case. But if there's an opportunity to where there's a need to raise the awareness through youth and veterans, that's where we go. And so we use the environment and what's happening there, and we build that into a curriculum. And in that curriculum, the youth, they go through the learning of that environment and what's going on, and they also come out to build out a book report, basically.
Yeah.
And through that book report that they put together, that's taught to veterans in the wild, and the veterans turns becomes the pupil, and the youth becomes the teacher. And they share with us of their finding, they share with us of the issues that are happening. And then it opens itself up to a dialogue discussion between the youth and veterans around solutions, ideas, which helps exercise the mind into thinking out of the box. It's like, oh, so if you was doing this, or if you was in this position, what would you do and how would you solve this problem? Right.
Yeah.
And so it's the fundamentals of building these thinking skills. When you challenge, and then when we come back from our deployments, um, the organization, we look to set up meetings where there's on state level or national level, with congressional members. Um, and we bring those youth and vets into those spaces, and the veteran steps back, and the youth becomes the tip of the spear
Becomes the
of
advocate.
navigating conversations around our congressional members.
Yeah.
And our congressional members gets an opportunity to hear these youth experiences of what they're doing and what they're and their advocacy, because they're learning how to advocate,
Right. How to speak up,
and
use their voice.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the challenging lesson, which is really good life lessons that you've learned, that they're not away there, they are away from home, and now they understand and see that not everybody is going to be on your side. uh you
Sure.
know
Sure.
and that's a real reality, right?
That's the truth.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so we make sure that the youth has this opportunity to go through these conversations with congressional members and have these healthy challenging conversations,
Right. Right.
and they're in the company of veterans that are there to support them. and give them the confidence build, yeah, and that's in a nutshell. But what the organization is about, and we do anywhere between, I say, 3 to 5 deployments during the summertime, and these deployments, they go out to different areas around the U.S. Starting here in local, we have local ones who that are really uh, more centered around new youth that are coming in.
Yeah.
And then our bigger deployments are more for our older youth that's been with the organization longer. And then, they'll be going to the bigger deployments. But we do deployments all over. We have veterans that come from all over. Um, and, we're a pretty robust organization. Yeah.
Yeah. And the deployments, if I remember correctly, I mean, these are like 2 weeks at a time, ballpark, 10, 12 days or so
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
going out, you're not, you know, in a, just hanging out in a city talking about the wilderness. Like, you're going into the wilderness
Right.
with these youth who I imagine, at least the story I'm telling myself, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine some of these, at least the first time, these might be some of the first times they're experiencing,
Yeah. This is like a lot of us the
nature, like
first time.
true
Yeah.
disconnected from Wi-Fi and cell
Yeah.
phones,
Yeah.
and there's no convenience stores around the corners. I mean, you're out rafting down a river, camping on the banks of the river, fly fishing, and you're taking some of these kids into the wilderness,
Yeah.
and that's what an amazing experience
Yeah.
for the veterans. I'm sure, to have that connection and that mission drive again, and that camaraderie. But for those youth as well, I mean, you talked about your experience traveling through Japan and how that changed your life. I mean, you're offering that to these youth. You're offering these life-changing experiences, and I think that's just beautiful, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then to follow that up with, now let's go talk to an elected official who, make sure they hear your story too. And yeah, and some of those elected officials, as well as I do, and the audience knows, they might not care so much about preserving and protecting,
Oh,
some of these spaces.
yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
having that conversation with someone who might not be a receptive audience, I mean,
Yeah.
what a great full rounding experiencing you're offering these youth, and giving them a different outlook on life, man. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And a lot of these, and as you spoke to this, you said this already though, but these congressional members, it's interesting of how they would, they would be against certain things, or work towards either maybe protecting, but a lot of them has never even been to these lands.
Sure.
A lot of them has never even seen the land.
Right. Right.
And you got this, 14 to 16, 17-year-old kid that comes in, and it's like they can say, like, I walked the land, I camped on the land, I ate on the land, I connected to the land. I've also connected to the indigenous communities on the land.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And that's going to be part of
yeah,
your story coming up, because that's such an important part of what you're doing now too. So
yeah.
yeah, I totally interrupted you there, and I
No,
apologize.
no, no,
I try not to do that to
oh,
my
good.
guests, but I'm so excited talking with you, man. I apologize.
It's okay. You have to apologize. Yeah, so that's conversation is dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Appreciate your kindness there.
yeah.
So continue on. What do you want to continue on where I interrupted you with talking with the kids, or do you want to continue on, because
I
you've
can
got more.
progress.
Yeah, you got more going on in your story. So Soul River Inc., though, it's still alive. It's still well. It's still functioning. It's still taking 3 to 5 deployment out a year. So that's still a thing.
Yeah.
And you're still actively involved in that organization, correct?
Hmm. Well, you know what? I am actively. But where things are at now is I'm actually taking a step back. Um, and the organization's been going on for almost, like almost 10 years now,
Yeah.
and so things have been going really good. And what I'm doing is taking a step back and allowing more veterans to step into leadership.
Others, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making that
Start leading
difficult step as a
deployments.
founder of walking away from your creation and letting it
Yeah,
continue to live with someone else leading. That's also a big deal, man. That's a hard thing
yeah.
to do as a founder of
It's a hard
something.
thing to do, and it's definitely the transition of that is a bit scrappy,
Sure.
because even the transition of trying to allow leadership to step in, there's no rule book to this,
Right.
and so you have to do the best you can, even training people. There's no rule book. You're the rule book, and you have to just do the best you can in training, et cetera. And so it's been a bit challenging for me,
Sure.
and and I think it's like you got funders that are used to working with me,
Sure.
and now there's someone else stepping in and running these deployments, and you got youth that's used to work, you got parents that's used to connect, so it's kind of like learning how to ride the bike all over again, not just for me, but for many other people, because I've been so much, the founder and the nucleus of the
Sure.
organization,
Yeah.
but I'm still there. I'm just spreading the leadership out, where I my reality of doing deployments is probably 3 to 4 deployments, and then after that, I'm kind of tapped out,
Yeah.
basically. You
Yeah.
know, if I had more leadership to step in, maybe 2 more veterans who are spearheading deployments, now we can actually say, okay, I could take 3, you could take 3, and you could take 3.
Yeah.
Now we're doing 9 deployments, right?
Right. Right.
And so
This
so
force
that's the
multiplier,
beauty.
getting other leaders in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the beauty of building the organization past me, right?
Right.
And that's what I like to see, and that would be success to me, when I can see the organization actually be able to function without me,
Yeah. Right on.
where I'm still part of it though, but if I get sick or whatever, it doesn't stop
It
because I'm
has a
sick.
life. Yeah. It has
Yeah,
a life. Yeah.
it has a life, but yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what's the origin story of your second organization that you started?
Well, the origin of my second organization, it definitely comes from a rooted place of where, even when I'm my younger years of getting into the outdoors and connecting, there was always this fear that my mom and my dad had,
mm,
and they've always felt uncomfortable of me uh exploring by myself.
mm-hmm.
And my dad would always say, instead of you camping by yourself, why don't you go to a campground where there's other people there? And so, um, and it's a generational fear. It's a
Sure.
generational fear that
Sure.
does stem from historical, of 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 slaves, basically,
Yeah.
and racism, and when you look at history, you look, deep rooted history, um, in the early stages of America,
Yeah. Yeah.
you had, slaves, and when slaves would run away, it would be the woods, and when slaves will get caught and killed, it would be the woods,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they be hunted, it would be the woods, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
a lot of that is translated over into, um, from lived experiences into stories,
Sure.
and those stories live in many different generations, and those stories has lived in my parents as well, where my parents has experienced some things in their lives, which it made them feel uncomfortable to go into the woods, and so I grew up with with listening to those kind of narratives, and it kind of really never shaped my experience of going into the woods. I was always rebelling against what my mom and my dad would tell me.
Yeah.
Up until a couple of years back, here I am, on actually, I think it was the day before Veterans Day. Actually happens twice. Actually, it was on Veterans Day, and me and a buddy of mine, we were we decided to go fly fishing down on the Deschutes River, and I pulled up right behind this other vehicle,
Yeah.
and we both walked down the hill, down to the water. We're fly fishing, and we saw as we're out there, we saw a couple of guys, and they saw us. We waved at them, and you know, over a couple hours, we were only ones out there, and when we got ready to get out of there, we hiked back up the hill. The car wasn't there, but my car was, and so we got in my rig and started up. And all of a sudden, as I started up, it was just all over the place, and the brake cables was pulled out. And that was the first incident, and I was like, "Dang, man, what's going on?" And it was a bit scary.
Sure.
It was scary for us, and we were stuck in the canyons for a long time until a ranger was making the rounds, and they were able to help us,
Yeah.
get my rig back to home. And then later, years later, I was on the Clackamas down in Estacada, and there was this guy angler. He walked into the river. He's waiting and fly fishing, and I'm probably maybe a length of almost 2 football fields, and the guy yelled at me and says, "Get off my river." And I was just like, I called him on it, and I didn't get off the river. I
Sure.
continued to fish. And so after the exchange of words, he drew his firearm, and he shot, to scare me. He shot in the air,
Jesus.
a warning shot. And it shook me up a little bit, and I had my
Yeah.
dog with me, Axe, but I just went further down and found me a different place to fish. And then he turned around and he shot at me, and that was when I got the hell out of there, and so
Chad, I'm sorry, man. That hurts my
yeah,
heart. Hurts my heart.
yeah,
Hurts my
that's,
heart.
yeah,
Damn, dude.
yeah. It's the world we live in,
I
man.
know it is, and that
You know,
hurts my heart that that's the world we live in, man.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry you went through that.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
and
I'm sorry people go through that. That's awful. It's ridiculous.
it's
Awful.
um, it's real.
Yeah, I know
It's
it is.
real.
I know it is, and
There's
I'm here with
some
you
negative.
to not put up with that bullshit.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and it did a number on me. I had to go through a lot of therapy all over again,
Yeah.
and um, and so um, yeah, after my therapy and getting back in to head out to the river again, as months passed, and I was find myself to get stronger and confident. Um, I I remember what that was when I started to remember a lot what my mom and my dad would warn me about, and with their fear, they're
Yeah.
scared, and so as I opened up and started paying more attention and talking to many other people of color, come to find out that there's a lot of many people of color that has experienced some level of racism in the outdoors, or bigotry, ignorance, women, elderly, and a lot of this fear is tucked away.
Sure.
No one doesn't do anything about it. It becomes a learned fear, and that learned fear translates over to them telling their kids,
Yeah. You
"Don't
just
go,
don't do it. You just
don't do it." Yeah,
don't take advantage of these beautiful open spaces that belong to you too.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's
It's
bullshit.
and so I think through a lot of soul searching and a lot of listening to different people, it's what has in my upbringing was also around, um, not when he was alive though, but my mom used to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
and there's times that my mom would read some of his speeches to me before I go to bed, and he kind of was like my childhood hero, just like everybody else's hero in the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah. Should be.
And so yeah, and I remembered some of this stuff, and so one of the big things I know about Dr. Martin Luther King is, it was this whole art around the practice of exercising love
Yeah.
for one another,
Yeah.
and that's what inspired me to open up a new organization named Love is King. And it's Love is King is about creating safe spaces. It's about stepping in where we feel uncomfortable to make sure that person or that family um, can have that opportunity to create a beautiful moment in nature. It's stepping into the resistance of bigotry, ignorance, and racism. It's creating safe spaces. It's encouraging uh, all people to move through nature and to explore nature and to enjoy nature. Um, so Love is King is, it runs two programs, and one program of Love is King is Operation Rome, and which is the acronym of Rome is Rapid Ongoing Advanced Missions, and it's focused around working with BIPOC leaders
Mm-hmm.
between the ages of, I would say, between the ages of 21 all the way up to like 70 years old.
Okay.
And it's tapping into each leader's experience as a leader of their profession and who they are. So we take on our teams is a curated of a 5-man team, and in that 5-man team, it could be poets, doctors, attorneys, conservation folks. But what we are tapping into people who has an interest in the conservation space, but don't know how to navigate and get into those conservation spaces.
Yeah.
They have always been recreationists, and so we don't really push the recreation of the outdoors by default. We are doing that automatically,
Sure.
right? But what we are pushing is the encouragement of giving you an opportunity to step into these very unique, um, precious, delicate, wild spaces, and to become a witness of that environment, and to become a witness and to engage with indigenous communities.
Yeah.
And when you become a witness to this experience, and you're moving through these experiences, turns into a form of advocacy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you now become an advocate, when you're tapping into that experience, and you step into advocacy of this land and of this indigenous community, now we're able to redirect that to your profession as an influencer, to the people that you are connected
Yeah.
to.
Your circles of influence of everybody that
Exactly.
you spend your life with. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really important
Yeah.
when you are coming, or when we are working on trying to protect a certain area. The fundamental, most important thing that we need to do in advocacy is collecting signatures,
Yeah.
right?
Build coalitions of support.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And so now that you are a witness, you are stepping into advocacy. Now you're able to amplify your voice to create that encouragement, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
And to build that. And so that's what Operation Rome is centered around: is growing uh, advocates within the conservation space, uh, opening us up to um, BIPOC folks, um, and to give them an opportunity. And the reason why I keep, a focus around the BIPOC is because historically, um, when you look at the people who are sitting at the table, who are making the decisions around our public lands, our fresh water,
Yeah.
um, and how we recreate in these bills,
Yeah.
it is a Caucasian
Yeah.
face.
They look like me.
Right. Yeah.
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 I get it. Yeah.
And it's not. It's just that's just how the system is.
No,
It's just
that's
right.
history, right? That's
Yeah.
just an honest. That's an honest assessment of history. So
Yeah.
bringing in Black, Indigenous, and people of color, just in case anybody didn't know what BIPOC means,
Yes.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Right.
and
We need
we need
diversity of voice
everybody at
at
the
the table.
table. We need
We
everybody at
need.
the
Yeah.
table, and
Exactly.
not just sitting at the table, but everybody's got to have a voice at the table.
Everyone has a voice at the table.
Yeah,
That's going to better the outcome and how we all recreate together, right?
absolutely.
And
How we live
because
together, right?
yeah, absolutely. Because at the table I could be Caucasian, but guess what? Now I actually have an opportunity to receive a couple gifts here at this table, and these gifts is that I can actually sit here and listen and learn from this indigenous woman or this indigenous man about their culture and the importance of what's important for them into entering public lands and fresh water that I may not know anything about, but now I can learn this. And now by me learning this, it empowers me to make a better decision,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
On for everyone, basically,
yeah,
And so that's love is king.
yeah.
Love is king.
I appreciate it. I want to emphasize too. I think the listening part.
Yeah,
The people historically seated at the table need to start listening to people who maybe have not historically been invited to the table, and I appreciate that perspective very much. So I think that's opened the door for you to expand your creative talents into other areas too. I don't know if that's the connection or not, but I know
yeah. It's
you're also doing this amazing work with Solar Rink and now Love is King,
yeah,
and now you're winning awards around the world being a documentary filmmaker focused on indigenous
yeah, yeah, yeah.
stories and Black stories in nature, and
Right.
tell us a bit about that, because it's like every other day I see a new Facebook post from you that you've won something else in another film festival around the world, man. And I'm just cheering you on, and I'm so happy putting those little heart
Appreciate
buttons
it, man.
down on Facebook, just seeing how much you're crushing it in the world of documentary filmmaking. So what's
I
going on
appreciate
with
it.
all that?
Well, I've always, as I said earlier, I went to school for, for art direction, photography, and that's where I, really learned, just the fundamentals, right, of working and operating as a creative, and so that creative, even though I've had these hardships along this whole path here, um, but that creativity's never left me. I had to quiet that down for a while,
Sure,
you know,
sure,
and then but as I gotten stronger and the stronger I got and had support along the way has allowed me to have a little bit more time with myself, and me having that time with myself is also a healing process, right?
sure,
And I'm still healing and going through my journey. And there's always this, like, that old said, there's a time for everything, right? And I think that creativity, like I said, it's always been there. I had to put it on the back burner, but it amped itself into the right timing of my journey, of my healing process. And so, but I have matured also, because when I look back on, like, a lot of my creative work was just different, and I think, with life challenges and changes and the exposure that I became exposed to, from, Soul River stuff and indigenous cultures, it did start to shape the way I started to view things in a really unique lens
yeah,
as a creative professional, and with this new lens, that lends itself to storytelling. It's me paying attention to that there are many very beautiful and unique stories amongst BIPOC communities that has not yet been put on the screen.
Sure. Sure.
You know, and I think through the art of storytelling, it's a bit, if it's done right, it could be a really um, strong tip of the spear to bring new enlightenment and empowerment into an audience of all people. You know, it's an opportunity to educate in a really unique way without having to get on a podium and preach to people.
Sure.
Right. You know, and a lot of people don't like to be preached to.
Right.
But if you can integrate your movement, or if you can integrate this cause, right, into a really unique story that people can follow, you are then able to create change in real time.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and that change in real time becomes the start of new conversations, you know, and it becomes the new aha moment, right?
Right. Right.
You know, for many folks, you know, and it also, it can become the new curiosity to the guy that's sitting next to me with the trucker hat, that may have some issues with me because I'm black.
Right.
But guess what? By him watching that, or the woman watching that, it opens up a really unique discussion. Like, hey, you know what? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Right? You know, and we can have a dialogue. And you know, and so, because I believe that, you know, part of our um resistance that we are receiving, that we are all receiving, you know, and the bigotry and the ignorance that lurks around us is lack of education
Sure.
and lack of exposure, right? You know, and the lack of connecting with communities,
Yeah.
you know, and so, so I just, you know, I think it's a fundamental, uh, 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 I think it's fundamentally right in front of us. I'm just paying attention probably a little bit closer, you know, you know, and really working with these stories, and creating really unique narratives, you know, setting up the stage to where it's presented in the right way, it carefully, to where through the documentary that I'm, you know, the filming documentary that I'm doing is not your typical documentary type of work. It is a little bit more out of the box, and that leans more into the creative space. But it's almost kind of like I'm playing off of talk shows, you know, and I'm bringing the talk show into the wild, you
Nice.
know, and
Yeah.
and in this talk show, you're learning about, we create these profiles of the folks in the film, you know, and you're learning about their individual lives. And then throughout the film, they all come together and we have these discussions like around the campfire, but it's kind of treated like a talk show. You
Yeah.
know, it's a really unique position that I've taken through this documentary work, and it works. It works. You know, people, you know, part of this storytelling, I'm leaning into an organic space of conversations that takes place.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm letting that grow organically, and I'm leveraging into that, where you can learn about everyone and learn about the cause of the issue all at the same time, and and literally walk away uh with feeling enlightened in some
Yeah.
kind of way, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, so, you know, it's there's a lot of work out there, you know, what I'm doing, you know,
Sure.
and I, you know, right now I'm probably the only one that's doing it, and I, you know, for right now, but I'm sure there's gonna be others, you know, stepping into that space, you know, that space, but I'm definitely enjoying the ride, and enjoying the fact that, you know, I'm not doing the work to try to get an award, but it's happening, and I'm just
It's
like, whoa,
happening in droves. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you know,
But I love the concept. I mean, the literally and metaphorically, you know, speaking around the campfire. I mean, that's human. That goes back to our origins as a species, you know, and you know, and have articulated so well that the power to move people comes from story.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from facts and figures, because people can dismiss facts and figures as
Right.
don't believe it. But
Right.
if you tell a story that grabs somebody's heart, that touches them deep inside, um, even the example like you use of the guy with the trucker hat on next to you, if you tell a story that grabs that person's heart, it's going to crack them open just a little bit. Just
Yeah.
like you said, to have that different perspective, to maybe start a conversation and change their mind and change their direction, and
Right.
change, what they might want to take action around.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing, man. I love what you're doing. So you've got Inward, Black Waters, and Resilience Rising. I think are the three films that are out right now in the last
Yeah.
year or two, that are
That's
all
right.
just kind of circulating in film festival circles right now, and just
Yeah.
snatching up wins after wins after
Yeah.
wins. Um, that's wonderful, man. I can't wait to. I Are these available for folks to watch yet, or what's the future of
No,
how can people, maybe, are you looking for distribution deals, I'm assuming, or something?
you know what? I have not started looking for distribution deals.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm wearing one too many hats. you know. Uh, but right now they're not available to the public. They're only available within the circuit of the film festivals,
Yeah.
basically. But sooner or later I will be making those available in time. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know, and I'll put up a follow-up message, to let people know that they're out, because I can't wait to see them. But I'm so happy for you that they're clearly wonderful films, because you're just snatching up all of these, jury award here, and
Yeah.
this film festival award there. So
Thank you.
congratulations, man. I
I
can't wait.
appreciate
I
it.
can't wait to see these, and keep doing it. I mean, you found a space that's working, telling these stories that need to be told, and yeah, there's an endless supply of stories of people who have not had their story told, that needs to be told, man. So
Yeah.
good luck, and continue on that journey, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end. I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate all of the time you've spent with me already today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, Chad. So, um, want to give you a call to action. I'm
Mm.
sure everybody listening to this or watching this are as amped up and inspired as I am right now. Want to go out and tackle these challenges and make the world a better place. So what's your call to action? What can someone do to either support your organization, support you and your mission, or whatever? What do you want people to do after listening to this or watching this?
Yeah, I mean, with my organizations, with Soul River Inc. and Love is King, you can always go to the website. We're always taking donations, number one. Number two is always looking for volunteer support. Always, it's just, and that's just a matter of you emailing through a website. And if you're interested in volunteering, we will get back with you. We can use volunteers on many different levels. And I'm, and also with, like filming, if people have new ideas or whatever, I'm always open to hear new ideas when it comes to filming new stories, etc. And so you can always, reach out to me through Love is King. And yeah, and that's it.
Great. All right. Well, we'll
Yeah.
make sure I'll include links to Love is King and Soul River Inc. in the show notes, so folks can go to get to your website, if they, or just Google it. You can find it, but I'll make sure people can get it through this
Mm.
program as well, so they can get in touch with you and support your organization, support your mission, and support the amazing work that you're doing. So hopefully we'll draw some more people to your cause, because it's one we need to get people behind. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
well, I end every episode with asking my guests the same three questions. We talk about heavy things sometimes in these conversations, and racism might be one of the heaviest things to talk about. I mean, it's such an ugly aspect of humanity.
Yeah.
So I always like to try to end the show on a bit of hope. And hope is this idea, as defined by those who study it, that you can have a vision for a better future, but you also feel like you have some agency to enact that better future. You know, you might not get there. It might be hard. You might stumble. Might be difficult. But you have a vision, and you have some sense that I can do something about making that vision come to pass. So I want to talk to you about what makes you hopeful, Chad. So I'm going to ask 3 questions. Just kind of rapid fire. Give me your first kind of gut reaction or heartfelt reaction to whatever the answer is, and we'll see what makes you hopeful for a better future. So the first question is, what is your vision for a better future? It can be for you personally or professionally or for the world. What's your vision for a better future?
Hmm. Um, I would say my vision for a better future, would be, um, seeing, more of all of us exercising, love for one another more. Yeah, yeah.
Why is that your vision for a better
Um,
future?
you know, it sounds really basic, but it's really complex. And if we are able to show and exercise more love for one another in our humanity, that there alone will, uh, eliminate the racism, the bigotry, and the ignorance. Those are things that are stopping us as humanity of coming together on many different levels. You know, um, and if we have that ability to do that, we as humans will be in a better place,
Yeah, right on.
mentally and heartfelt for one another. Yeah.
Right on. So last question. Imagine we're in that future. We're in that future where people are showing love and kindness and compassion to each other on a regular basis, and bigotry and hatred is done away with. We don't have that anymore because we're loving each other and being kind and compassionate to each other. How does that make you feel, man, that we're living in that future?
Um, that 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 would make me feel, um wow, that would make me feel very, uh relaxed. Yeah, yeah. How I move through this world. Um, I think, that me saying relax it's a deeper relax because,
Sure.
you know, um, you said, race is it's a heavy issue, and it is. It's very
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
Me as an African American man and how I move through society every day,
Yeah.
um, I don't have the luxury, um, to relax.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, that's the same with women. That's the same with people who have disabilities. Um, there's many people that has to put on a certain type of,
Yeah. LGBTQ
yeah,
plus. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
ugliness out there that I
yeah,
get. When you say relaxed, it means something different than maybe when I say relaxed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't get it, but I get it, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, man. That's beautiful. I'm going to do everything I can with how many breaths I have left in this life to try to get us to that future where we're
yeah,
loving each other and you can feel relaxed.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing your story with me today, Chad, and with the audience. And man, you have my full support. You have since the first day I met you. Whatever I can do to continue to help you on with your journey. I just think the world of what you're doing, and the times that we've had a chance to chat in person a handful of times in for the last few years. I just think you're a hell of a human being, and I'm grateful to call you someone that I know and I think a friend. So, so, and one we didn't talk about is your battle buddy Axe. I'm going to put up a picture of Axe. I think I see him there in the
Yeah,
background.
he just came into the room.
Yeah, yeah. So Axe has got to be one of the, if not the most amazing service dogs I've ever met in my life. So glad Axe made an appearance. We didn't talk about him that much, so I'm
Yeah.
so happy he just showed up at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, Axe. All right, man. Well, Chad, do you want to? I'll leave you with the closing word, man. Anything before we cut you out here and let you go?
You know, I think I'm I don't have any more words to share. I think I said enough, in the story, and people can pick and pull or what they want to hear, and whatever they pick and pull, I'm sure it's going to land with them in some kind of positive way. I think it's, yeah, so I'm not going to, speak to changing the stars and climbing the mountain. I, I think maybe the biggest thing I'll just say, just like we just, the exercise as much love as you can for one another.
Yeah,
That's what we need right now. Yeah.
right on.
Yeah.
Chad Brown, thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you all the best.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of episode 15 of Stories Sustain Us. I can't thank Chad Brown enough for joining me today and sharing his incredible story. Chad's journey from childhood in Texas to serving in the military during such turbulent times is deeply inspiring to me. Hearing about his transition to civilian life, his creative work in New York, I mean, come on, he was working for Russell Simmons. Come on now. And how backpacking through Japan became such a decisive moment in his personal growth, all that was truly moving to me, and I hope for you too. Chad's openness about his mental health struggles and how nature, especially fly fishing, became such a healing force in his life is an incredible reminder of the restorative power of the natural world. And of course, the work Chad's doing with Soul River Inc., connecting veterans and youth through outdoor experiences, well, that's just simply beyond commendable. The fact that he's also founded Love is King to create safe spaces for marginalized communities in nature shows Chad's dedication to fostering inclusivity and belonging in places where it's needed most. A story about being shot at while fly fishing. As I said in the interview, that hurts my heart. Figuratively and literally, that hurts my heart. I don't get it. I don't understand racism. But I know it's real, it's dangerous, and it's deadly. And I'm committed to doing my best to be an advocate and ally in the fight against racism, which for me means standing up for justice, listening to marginalized voices, and using my platform, this podcast, to challenge inequality. It's about educating ourselves, confronting biases, and taking action, whether those actions are big or small, to dismantle systemic racism. Together, I believe we can create a more inclusive and equitable world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And that is just what Chad is doing. That's the example he is providing, not only with his nonprofit organizations, but also with his filmmaking. Chad's belief in the power of love and storytelling, particularly through documentary filmmaking, as a way to build understanding and connection, is a message that truly resonates with me. With this podcast, and as someone who has made a few documentary films myself, and I just love documentary films in general, I truly believe in the power of love and storytelling as a force for positive change. I can't wait to see Chad's award-winning films. Please know I'll be sure to post information about his work when I know it's available to the public so you can watch his films too. And lastly, Chad and I did have a discussion about a difficult topic, his suicide attempt. Thank goodness, seriously, thank goodness his suicide attempt failed and he was able to get the help that he needed. The world would have missed out on all he's accomplished since and all he's going to accomplish combating racism and shining the light of love on issues related to equity and inclusion. My life, like so many others, has been touched by the loss of a loved one to suicide. So, look, if you or someone you know is struggling, remember that help is available. Veterans and non veterans alike can reach out for support. Please know you are not alone. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7 by dialing 988. Veterans can press 1 to connect directly with the Veterans Crisis Line. Whether you're a veteran or not, talking to someone can make all the difference. Please reach out because your life matters. And if you know someone who might be struggling, please reach out to them too. We're all in this thing called life together. We need each other. Let's help each other out. With that, please join me in thanking Chad Brown once again for sharing his wisdom and heart with us today. To the audience, I hope Chad's story inspires you as much as it has inspired me. Remember, nature is not just a place we visit. It can be a sanctuary for healing and connection. If you enjoyed this episode, you know I'm going to ask, please share it with your friends and family and subscribe, rate, and review Stories Sustain Us on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for all your support. Your engagement really does matter. Now, next week's episode of Stories Sustain Us, I speak with an environmental scientist who works for a local government authority on the north coast of New South Wales in Australia. We have an in-depth conversation about integrated watershed management and his career managing 40 kilometers, or about 25 miles for us here in the U.S., of Pacific Ocean coastline and a large network of rivers and creeks in a beautiful and predominantly healthy, biologically diverse river valley. It's a wonderful conversation about the importance of healthy waterways and the challenges of climate change, like sea level rise. And we talk about platypuses too. So you're going to want to check it out on October 8th at storiessustainus.com, wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. I hope you stay inspired and keep working toward a more sustainable and compassionate world. Until next time, I'm Stephen Schauer. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.